Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show, we'll talk about a Linux project centered around a topic about something in the Linux open source world. Could be a Linux distribution, desktop environment, or application. We also discuss the news and take topics from anywhere around the world for an enjoyable chat. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux, fitness, and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. And with me today, I've got White Chocolate. I think this is the first time you've been on the show, so welcome. Eris. Colin is back from doing his Mad Max thing across Australia, I guess. Jinda. Vince is here. Nicholas, also new to the stream. Vash. Nice to see your text, I guess. Linux Ninja. And Adam, who snuck in just now. So welcome all.
Yo.
G'day.
Thank you, Nate.
So there will be no Sravan today. Apparently he's out on Victory Road hunting Pokemon. So that's where he is right now. So on the docket for today, we're going to have an open mic night. We're going to check what's on the menu for next week. Do a news flight. But before that, what have you been doing in Linux? Vash, you have just released another video. Man, you're really cranking these things out, aren't you? What is that, like 14 a week now? I'm kidding. It's like, what, 2 a week? 1 a week? Something like
Just 1 a week.
Okay.
But I'm trying to get to the point where I can get to 2 a week, but it's really just a matter of really finding the topics that I think are worth putting videos out about. But today was just a KDE Plasma. I looked at the notification settings because that's an area that I really had not went into before. So I was looking at it. I was like, okay, well, I can see where some of these could be useful. I wanted to kind of go over those and kind of add to that series. And I want to keep on, putting ones out about that because there are so many menus in Plasma that you can go through and so many other tools. I just saw something about a markdown editor or writer that was announced today, I think.
Really? Oh, that's very cool. I'd like to check that out just because I'm kind of a fan of the markdown style of recording text. That would be pretty cool.
I may see if I can get it installed here on the distro I'm using right now and maybe even play around with that for next week. We'll see.
And that distro is what?
Right now it is Nobara. We will see if that ends up sticking around.
I see you didn't take my suggestion on Twitter.
No. SUSE is just probably not one that I'm really going to go with just because of some of the hoops you're going to have to jump through for some of the things I need to do.
Okay. But, different strokes for different folks.
But yes, I had that and then also put out the first newsletter from the site this morning. So that was cool too. So it's been a busy day, but overall a good one.
Excellent. I did receive a newsletter. I liked it because I didn't have to do any weirdness for actually looking at it because I have my Kmail set to a dark background and everything. So sometimes when I get newsletters, it's my dark background with dark text, but yours works beautifully. Absolutely beautiful. So, and it was an easy read too, which is nice. Well, kind of like you, I discovered a very interesting app in KDE recently, and it's been around since 2019. So I was kind of late to the the party on this one. But there is an emoji selector that's in KDE. Has anybody played with this? So if you have
What's it called?
It's called Emoji Selector App. If you
right, okay.
Yeah. So if you hold the meta key, if you hold the meta key and then hit period, it pops up, and it's really quite handy. I just stumbled upon it. I think I inadvertently mashed the keys for it, and then I'm like, oh, there's an emoji thing in here. It works quite nice. Well, it's got all the standard emojis, so I don't know if there's like a superset of emojis by other platforms or whatnot. But anyway, so it's in the menu. It's under utilities. At least it is in my version of Plasma. And it's nice. So you find the emoji you want, you click on it, and that copies it to the clipboard, so then you paste it from there. So it's not quite, you click on it, and then it pastes it automatically to wherever your text box was, which is probably a good thing, because I could see myself over emojiing something. So I think is probably a better way to do it. But it's very convenient. Then it keeps the history, have a little history section as well, so whatever you've recently used can overuse later. Anyway, I thought it was really cool. It's a very simple application. It doesn't really do a lot other than give you a selection of emojis, and then you can, throw them wherever. So it's one of those little gems that I found buried in the recesses of Plasma, and I did a little article on it on my website here. So if you want to,
a diamond in the rough, they may say, a diamond in the rough.
Well, but that would imply that Plasma's rough, and so it's a diamond in the diamond with it amongst the diamonds.
Pretty adequate phrase then, I guess.
It sounds very similar to characters in GNOME, because characters in GNOME works very similar to what you just described.
Actually, I think GNOME has the emoji picker built into it. It's like since about 3 or 4 releases ago.
Yeah.
I know KDE's probably had it from about the same time. Actually, you just discovered it.
Yeah, I just discovered it, and I know that I was late to the party on it, and I did acknowledge that I was late to the party on it. So,
well, welcome aboard.
Yep. There's these things called emojis, like little smiley faces and frowny faces and thinking faces.
So I'm gonna interject here with the emoji thing.
Mm-hmm.
I read a thing on, I think it was on Twitter. There was a thread where a person who is visually impaired had a hard time dealing with emojis because their screen reader will describe the emoji. So people will post messages like where they're trying to emphasize something, and they'll have like clapping hands in between each word. And so it'll read like, clapping hands, you clapping hands, should clapping hands, not clapping. Just like it would read out emojis, and people like spam emojis, like, and some of them were like really verbose. It was like medium skin tone hands clasped celebratorily or something like that. I just read that like 23 times in a row. It's like wait a minute. Like, probably should be a little more conscious if you're posting to people who are using screen readers.
Or maybe instead you should communicate only using emojis. You could
possibly. I mean,
you could string together an entire sentence.
Medium tone hands clasping celebratorily.
Smiling.
Yeah, just over and over again. And then they're like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Anyway, I think emojis are fun to insert in things, and one of my complaints about like desktop interaction with certain, like certain applications, whatever, you want to throw in an emoji, and just to kind of emphasize, you're not being a jerk smiley face, because you put a smiley face, you can say really, crass things, but if you add a smiley face after it, then it's fine, right? I was going to say, it was nice for, I think it was using something in Patreon, I posted something, I could throw an emoji in there to add, an emotional context to the whatever I was going to say. So I think it's handy. I like it. What are you going to say, Colin?
I was going to say, I remember Martin Wimpress copped a little bit of, what can you say, slight criticism for over-emojing one of his, was it his reviews or...
he always does it with release notes, I think.
But his release notes, that's the one, yeah. He adds a heap of emojis to his release notes. And when he first did it, I remember some people saying, it was appropriate. It was quite funny.
Well, it allows you to be more direct in your speech if you just add a smiley face to it, because sometimes people read into, if they're in a bad mood or whatever, they're just going to take whatever message as being negative, even if it's not being negative. So I think if you put in an emoji with a smiley face, you might be able to, offset some of that. I'm thinking
it adds a universal context, doesn't it?
Right. It does.
Yeah. I was planning my road trip to Melbourne that I've just done, and I had an app on my phone for the longest of times, I don't know, a few years, called Joplin.
Oh.
Never used it. It had the markdown thing and all that, so I wasn't really keen on using that. So I used something else. But eventually, I needed something that I could synchronize to devices, because I found it easier typing on the computer than on the phone. And Joplin comes in really handy because it just synchronizes everything from one device to another. So that worked really well. So I just thought I'd mention that as an app. Joplin, I found it quite handy in just setting out what I was going to do on my road trip and everything, and then it just automatically syncs from your computer to your phone. Very handy little application. Just thought I'd mention that.
Well, that is very cool. I think I've heard of Joplin before, and I want to say I heard about it from Vash, actually.
Yeah, I've messed around with Joplin. It's a good note-taking app. It's just not the paradigm of note-taking app that I want to use at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's nice that it can run on everything, and if I recall, it syncs between your PC and your phone if you want it to.
Yes, that's correct. It does.
So when you say it's not
Very handy.
the paradigm you like, what's specifically missing?
If I recall, the search, I wasn't really wild about the search. It could be that they've updated it since then, though, or I could be not remembering that right. But at this point, I really like being able to link my notes together with backlinks and stuff like that. So I tend to use more like Logsec or Obsidian or one of those apps.
Okay. And what kind of notes do you have on there now, Colin? Like what kind of notes?
It was just pretty much I was planning out where I was going to fuel up the car, where I was going to stay overnight, and there was a Perth to Melbourne trip and then a Melbourne back to Perth trip. So I sort of planned all that out roughly, so I knew how far I could travel before I run out of fuel and things like that. So you got to be very sort of a little bit careful on the Australian roads because it can be quite a distance between fuel stations. However, I think they've put up a few more since back in the day. So there's a few more around now. But I did travel through the 90-mile straight road. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
It's the Nullarbor 90 miles, 146.6 kilometers long of straight road. But I think it's the straightest road.
It's very dangerous, right? I heard, because you can easily fall asleep because there's not turns. Because in the US, like every 3 or 5 miles, it needs to the interstate needs to have a little slight curve or something. That way you stay awake and stay alert. And I think I heard that Australian road is dangerous, not because of the road itself, but because people could fall asleep because they're just going straight, just holding on straight.
If you take your breaks every couple of hours or whatever, it's not so bad. I didn't realize that I'd actually finished it, so it wasn't too bad. I think there was probably quite a lot of road trains on the road as well, so that sort of keeps you busy in sort of keeping away from those things. So that sort of keeps your concentration level up, so you're not sort of going too far on the side of the road and whatever. So yeah, but it was interesting little travel. So that's what I used Joplin for anyway, just to mark out what I was doing. And I wanted to, and I don't know about you guys, but I just sometimes just can't handle typing on a phone. It's just difficult. And typing on the computer so much better and laying out things so much easier. Then syncing it to the phone is so much better. Then you can just look at what you've written down and you can update on the phone if you need to.
So as you described, why you use Joplin and then your travels there in Australia, it only underscores what I already believe about Australia. Although you think it's fine, it's probably a lot more treacherous than where I live.
No, not really. I mean, I didn't see any animals on the road when I was traveling. What I travel 3,500 kilometers there and then another 3,500 back. Didn't see only dead animals, but not the other thing you got to worry about is kangaroos hopping in front of your car because they can do some serious damage. So that was the only thing that concerned me, but it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Travel during the day, not at night, and you'll be fine.
And you have to route plans to make sure you hit all the fuel stops so that you don't run out of fuel.
Yeah, there are fuel stops that you don't really know about, but yeah, I had a cousin that came over here that drove over before I left. So I was talking to her, and she said she didn't really go more than 160 kilometers without seeing a fuel station. So she's pretty much right.
Yeah.
I did come across. I did get low on fuel, and I came across this petrol station, and I'm trying to pump the petrol in, and it wasn't doing anything. It was an unmanned station. I thought there was somebody there. I realized it was unmanned. I had to go put my credit card in and figure out how to select which pump I was using and how much. And I thought, how much should I put without overfilling the car? Otherwise, I'm going to leave. It's going to overfill. So right. that was quite interesting. Just in the middle of nowhere, this unmanned petrol station.
so completely unmanned. I don't think I've ever seen that in the US. Like in the US,
yeah, right.
Usually gasoline stations are like stores, convenience stores. There's always like somebody in there.
Yeah, most of ours.
This way,
ours.
You get petrol, your soda pop, and one of those churros. What are they called? The little things in the rollers. It's like a little sausage. No, well, there's that too.
Talking about
Hot dog.
taquito?
Taquitos. Yeah, there we go.
What-
Taquitos.
What are they? Taquitos. Never heard
Yeah.
of those.
How would you describe a taquito, Adam? It's
You know what a tortilla is?
well, I do.
No,
Flat-
I'm talking to Colin.
He probably does. He doesn't-
Sorry.
'Cause he's unfamiliar with taquitos. So it's a tortilla, like a flat flour tortilla.
Right.
And
Tortilla.
they put like spicy chicken and like cheese inside of it. Like that's it.
Okay.
There's nothing nutritious about it. Then like roll it up and like it's kind of like fried a little bit or something. Like it's kind of it's crunchy, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And it's like
Sounds like
it's like 1,000 calories with like a 0 nutritional value.
Well, it's energy basically.
Oh.
It's just a stick of energy.
But what about
Yeah.
the taste, Adam? What about the taste?
Well, it's loaded in
It's like-
sodium, so it's
Yeah.
great.
It's like I don't know. You really have to have like a very like just plain palate like to really enjoy it. Like it doesn't taste good, right? Like when I was a kid, we used to have these like little drinks that would look like little barrels or whatever. And as a kid, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. As an adult, it feels like caustic chemicals going down my throat. So it's kind of the same kind of comparison. Like if you were to eat like a burrito from like a nice place, you're like, oh, this is a good burrito. You eat a taquito, you're like, I might not live the day. So
Right.
it's about like that.
It's basically fat, carbohydrates, and salt in a stick form that's deep fried. So it has, then the polyunsaturated fats, which are sure to kill you eventually.
Yeah.
Right. Basically. So just a stick of energy. It's like,
So enough road trips and you cut a few years off.
That's right. Just kind of.
I think our equivalent would be a sausage roll.
No, that'd probably be good. A sausage roll.
Yeah. So, yeah. You reckon it's that, do you? Yeah. Sausage roll, probably. A pie. A meat pie.
A
We
meat
have
pie,
meat
yeah.
pies. Yeah.
Well, Cat Daddy says that there's nothing like some gas station nachos, and those are always
Yeah.
good too, especially when the
The key thing is like anything you buy from like a convenience store that's supposedly quote unquote food, it's gonna be like the most processed, just salty, just like Nate said, it's literally just like a stick of energy that just doesn't make you want to throw up initially.
Right.
Like that's really what it's for. It's just like I need this to get some energy to get through like another 2 hours. That's it.
That's right.
Exactly. Oh,
No,
and
you,
I say, and Benjamin Eldridge brought up a great one: gas station sushi. That's you have no idea how that's going to come out, but it's
Not
it's
brave
not.
enough for that.
You're better off buying a lottery ticket.
Reminds me of
Oh,
Futurama
boy.
when Fry bought the egg salad sandwich from the gas station bathroom.
Oh,
And they're like, what's that black cracker? And he chewed it. He's like, oh, it's tomato.
Oh, that's awful and hilarious. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, gas station foods. Good times. That's an adventure in and of itself. You don't know how it's going to react. Yeah, egg salad sandwiches.
That's an adventure of itself.
Also, if you're young enough and you're curious what older people are complaining about when they say heartburn, eat those and you'll definitely know.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, you will know.
Uh,
Oh, that's a beautiful conversation right there. Yeah, Andrew just said there's a gas station where she gets her junk food, but then there's always a potato chip that falls, and I don't notice it until her wife asks how the potato chips were. So yeah. When you travel and you have chips, and they fall in your lap, you actually find the chips in your seat they somehow get underneath you. I don't know if that's oh
Yeah, the art of eating while driving is it's a learned thing.
it is. And then Benjamin Eldridge says the 7-Eleven by my house sells cookie dough balls, raw cookie dough balls. That sounds like a great idea too. Oh boy.
Can I get one of those salmonella spheres?
And the salmonella gives it an extra zing, I think, probably.
You'll remember it.
Makes it more. Yeah, the food makes the food a lot more memorable. That's exactly it. Oh, that's glorious.
That'll make you drive a bit quicker to get to the next stop. That's for sure.
You make good time.
Well, based on what you were saying for your trip, I don't think you'd make one.
Yeah. Yeah, probably in Australia that'd be a lot more dangerous. There's probably some laws in Australia that they can't serve food like that in gas stations, I'm guessing. to reduce fatalities on the road.
There are laws, and then there's things that people do.
Exactly. Well, all right. Thankfully, there are no gas stations I had to go to get here.
Anyway, that was Joplin. Anyway, we started off talking about.
Right. Oh.
So Colin, did you note all the Pokemon that you captured on the way?
Pokemon.
Yeah, that's where Nick said you were.
No.
Did you note the Pokemon you hit with your vehicle?
No Pokemons.
No.
Vehicle's fine.
Maybe some Tuxemons. Yeah, I think Linux Ninja, you put it in the chat here. One thing about eating gas station food is you're sure to stop at another gas station soon. So maybe it's they're colluding with one another to ensure that they get you to pull off more often. That could be what's going on. It's like a network.
It's got a point. That's why we call it gas emoji. We call them gas stations.
You're right. Gas stations. Well played. Okay. So on that, Eris, you put together a fun straw poll about how many computers you have total in your house, and you put some caveats on that.
Yes. I said how many computers do you have total? Laptops, PCs, convertibles, or Raspberry Pis. It includes all those, but it does not include tablets or phones. I thought it was interesting because some people now don't even have computers; they just have phones. So I thought it was interesting to see what the answers would be. And the biggest portion of the people who voted picked more than 10 computers, 46%, and then 3%. Three computers was 9%, 6 computers was 9%, 7 computers was 9%, 8 was also 9%, and 5 and 9 was 6%, 2 and 4 were 3%, and 10 and 1 was also 3%. And it was interesting that actually somebody picked 1, I think.
But nobody had 0.
Yeah, overall it was 46% picked more than 10 computers. That was the vast majority of the categories.
So when I was counting, I think I got to 13, and I thought, well, does that also count the computers that are off, that I'm not using actively, or was it in total? So I just counted the computers that have been on in the last week, because
somebody asked me that in Discord, I think, and I told them that if you use the computer once a year, you can count it. If somebody in the household. I didn't add it to the other post because I probably should have added it at the beginning, but I didn't answer that person because I think you could have a computer but not use it at all. And is that really count as computer? It's just like some kind of old technology you have there. Like I have some old routers that I don't use. I don't really count them as routers that I have.
Right.
I just figured out a problem with the poll though. What about Steam Decks?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I didn't even count that one.
Oh, Steam Decks? Yeah, I didn't think.
I don't think I'd count anything with thumbsticks. Like like anything that's like a like a controller, right?
If I was if I can, I would give credit to Rick, not a Linux Guru guy. He came up with this question. I think a week back he asked that in Telegram. I think.
I'm one of those boring people with very few.
Well, I mean, you're moving.
Despite what you guys no, even before. I really don't have that many. I try not to keep very many. I know, like I'm definitely not the 46% of the 10 plus crowd. I have like 2 that I actively use and 2 that just sit there. So I guess I'm in the 2 to 4 count.
I wasn't sure if those numbers also counted things like my Commodore 64, VIC-20, things like that, Amigas, which are all functional. I still have way over 10, not including my vintage stuff that I still play with.
I think I have more consoles than computers, like by like 2 or 3 to 1.
So what's the delineation between a console and a computer?
They all use controllers. I don't use keyboards with them. They don't run like a desktop operating system.
But if they could run a desktop operating system, like you can make a PlayStation 3, or at least you could, a full Linux machine, would that not constitute a computer then?
If it's running Linux, but it's not.
A console has to be streamlined. You don't have to worry about updating it like
Oh no,
maybe
new ones you do.
maybe a PC. Maybe it's supposed to update in the background. I think that's what makes it a console more than anything.
One would
just
argue
like
your computer should be streamlined.
yeah, exactly.
Well, a computer's a general purpose machine. Oh, I have a Chromebook too. Does that count? Chromebooks count? That's like a kind of a computer. It's like a computer with an irritating keyboard.
Apple has been asking this question for years. What's a computer? Right? So I think we all should be wondering since like 2015 or whatever. Did you guys see that commercial? That was the worst.
But the point was that an iPad was not a computer, right? But now they're trying to make it back into a computer.
Yeah, it's something.
I think Leo asked me this very question, if why phones didn't count in iPads, and I said anything that's simple to change your OS, then it's a computer. Otherwise, it's I didn't say it, but it's the appliance at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think anything you can run a different OS on, right? Because like even if you run different Android ROMs, it's still Android, right?
All right. Well, that puts the Steam Deck back into the computer category because you can run whatever.
Does.
Yeah.
But then the thumbstick's invalidated once again.
Okay.
Those thumbsticks, man, you just can't get around them.
I see. So the thumbsticks is the killer for that. Even though I can hook a keyboard and mouse into it, I can dock the thing and use it like a computer.
You'll still be staring at them thumbsticks.
Sounds like you need to remove the thumbsticks, Nate, and then you have another computer.
Okay. I don't think I would do that. That's too much work. That's too much work to prove a point, I guess. And I'm already past the 10 mark. All right, well, very cool. I thought that was a fun survey. It might have been, and I don't know if it would have been any better, but if you would have done 0, 1 or 2, 2, 3, and then like
combine them.
Yeah, combine a couple of them, because if it's then you could figure out like if someone has in the teens range or north of 20. But
I thought so, but then somebody's like, I have exactly 6. I don't want to pick 6 to 8.
Yeah. So I think they had to stop at 10 plus because I think that's as many options as you had in the questionnaire, I think.
I did have asked people saying, why do you want to know how many I have? So I think it was good that I just put 10 because I don't want to get too specific.
Right. That makes sense. Well, very cool. Yeah, that was fun. Thanks for that survey. All right, well, tonight is an open mic night. That means any conversations, anything that you want to talk about that's Linux and open source related, anything that's taken from the discourse forums, Telegram, Discord, or something between your two ears, that is totally cool. And the first topic I want to talk about was something I think was kind of exciting. Linux kernel 6 has been released. Is anybody here running Linux kernel 6?
Not even on Arch.
Oh.
Not yet.
I have 3 machines running on Linux kernel 6. This machine right now is running Linux kernel 6. So it was announced on the 2nd of October that Linux kernel 6 was being released. So it improves hardware support, which I think like every kernel release improves hardware support. Is there one that says doesn't? Has there been a release that doesn't improve hardware support? It introduces support for the ARch.
Yeah, they've removed some hardware support from different kernel releases.
That's like floppies though and such, right? Or maybe like
so that means those things quit working, so they move backwards.
It does remind me of how like when new phones are announced, they're like, this is our best phone ever. It's like, yeah, well, if you come up with one this year and it's not better than the other one, then why'd you do it?
I could ask that to Apple. Why'd you remove the headphone jack?
What gets me is how people go and out and they're saying it's the best thing ever. It's like, yeah, that's what they're supposed to do. What would it say if they didn't?
Yeah, go on stage like, we made this new one, but you may as well buy the old one, guys. This one's kind of a dud.
Or look at the MacBooks that have that touch bar at the top. Like, what a huge downgrade. I'm not paying for that.
Yeah, I think some people did some really neat things with those touch bars though. Like they hacked them and did some other fun things, which actually I think if you could give me the function key row and the touch bar, I'd be on board if I could have both, but not one.
As long as I have a physical escape key. I mean, you're gonna run Vim, you need the escape key.
Yeah, you need the escape key.
But isn't that what the caps lock is for? Just make caps lock escape.
All right, Spark Boy.
You can use. I mean, I actually use the caps lock. Not as much as I used to, but I do use it. You have to send those emails where you're shouting. I mean, How else are you going to shout in an email without a caps lock? A lot of work to hold the shift key down with your pinky.
I'll keep that in mind for the next newsletter.
Yep.
Just make the font really big.
But they could be running a text or an email client that strips out the formatting.
Well, then
Back in the
they've solved the
BBS
problem.
days,
They've
we
solved the
didn't have
problem of people.
fonts.
They solved the problem of people you just shouldn't communicate with. So like, if they don't respond, like, "Hey, why are you yelling?" You know, just not to talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your answer
Everything's
might
in
be
H1 and they're just like, what?
your answer might be I'm on a TRS-80 Model 1. It only has capital letters.
Oh, so you're always shouting. That's got to be rough.
That means everything written on that computer is important.
So with Linux kernel 6, it introduces support for AArch64 hardware architecture to swap transparent huge pages without splitting them. Support for NVMe, in-band authentication. No idea what that is, but it sounds cool. And support for PCI buses in the open RISC and long arch architectures.
Didn't they add support for those new Intel Arc GPUs in there? I seem to recall hearing something about that.
Let's see here in the release notes.
Yeah,
Or I
I
should say in this
thought I heard
announcement.
something about that.
It could be.
I mean, I could be completely wrong.
Something about the rat bleed speculative execution exploits fixing continues, whatever that means.
Yeah, I know there's also more support for the open RISC as well, which I think in general. But anyway, so I think that's pretty exciting. It's the kernel's still chugging along. And apparently there's nothing really significant about kernel 6. It's just that Linus Torvalds says that, or Linus says that he runs out of fingers and toes, so he's got to move to the next number. It used to be like when you had a major release, version release number, don't go with that one, wait till they have the point release after that. But I guess that's not as significant anymore.
Okay, correction. 6.0 adds in the Arc GPUs for laptops. The desktop ones come in 6.1.
Okay.
There seems to be a lot of Broadcom support added into this one, from what I can see.
Oh, also implementation of the second generation of the ButterFS send protocol that supports sending large data and raw compressed extents. So I've never used ButterFS send. Well, I like ButterFS because it sounds smoother, but yeah, B-Tree because I know it's BTRFS.
I've got a question from basically a non-programmer's point of view.
Yeah.
I've read a bit about Rust being in the kernel. Can someone explain, if anyone knows, why that's a good thing, why that's an important thing? Anyone?
Because Rust is a newer language that more young programmers understand. It has a lot of, from what I understand, and I don't know this for sure, it has a lot more protections built into it. It's less
guardrails. So if you're programming in C, and let's say you're allocating a section of memory to use as a buffer, you have to be yourself conscious of the beginning and ending of that memory space and manage it appropriately. If you're using a language that has memory safe operations, you've got the guardrails there to protect you from yourself. So things like buffer overruns are less likely to happen.
So it's more secure.
So another example is like by default, all your variables are immutable, I believe. And so you can't accidentally change them unless you explicitly say that, hey, this is going to be mutable.
So they're constants by default?
That sounds like assembly.
Yeah, kind of.
That is my understanding. I was actually looking at it a little bit today, and but they were saying by default, all variables that you create are immutable unless you go and actually specify that this is something that's going to change. And they actually have a specific, like, not a function, I guess it may be a function, but they have something specific you have to make it mutable specifically. Otherwise, it's just going to be a constant.
So it's like the opposite of everyone else, almost.
No, that's not unique to Rust. That's also in other languages.
So I think that having Rust or allowing Rust to be a method of one of the languages allowed for the kernel, I think it allows for a broader range of developers to contribute to the kernel. I think is really the intent, and in a safer way. So
very good, thanks.
All right. See, Linux Ninja. I made this one first because I figured there'd be less like conversation about it, so I can go into the meatier conversation next. Not sure if anybody has heard the news, but Google Stadia is shutting down. So we can cry your tears of disappointment.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but you knew that.
No, it can't be.
Yeah, on they are shutting down January 2023.
Yeah, no, I'm just messing with
No.
Is this worse
Breaking
than
news
the end
tab.
of Neighbours?
This is not worse than the end of Neighbors because Neighbors was around for a lot longer, and Google Stadia is only around for 3 years, I think. So the service will remain live for players until January 18th, 2023, and Google will be refunding all Stadia hardware purchased through the Google Store, as well as all the games and add-on content purchased from Stadia Store, which I thought was kind of a wow. That seems like quite the revenue loss.
They are not.
Caveat is they're not refunding the pro subscription money.
Okay.
So I guess the Stadia tournament, the tournament that they had scheduled for March is off.
Probably
Gotta
a
believe, man.
good guess.
Well, you still got the NVIDIA one around, right? Which is the same thing, does the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Online
GeForce
gaming?
Now is still around, and
Yeah, that's the
Microsoft's
one.
Xbox game cloud gaming thing is still around, and Amazon
Right.
Luna is still around. Although most people
Oh, I
don't
didn't
seem to
know-
know about Luna. Yeah,
Didn't know about that
No,
one.
I didn't know about Amazon.
yeah,
no idea.
it's not a great service, but I mean, it lasted longer than Stadia. Oh,
So the article goes on and says they didn't get the traction with users they expected, and so they had to make the decision to kill it. I don't know what any of the numbers are. I didn't look.
So about that,
Mhm.
there was one point where they were giving you like the controller. If you buy like a Chromecast or something like that, there was like a coupon where you would buy a Chromecast and they would give you the controller just so you would get on Stadia. That's how desperate they were to get people
Wow.
into Stadia.
so there are numerous reasons for all of this, but I will let you finish the thing, and then I'll talk.
Oh, you can interject. You can interleave conversation at will.
Okay,
There's no.
here we go. So first off, the first signs that this was going to go bad in any way was when they showed off Stadia at GDC 2019, like GDC being Game Developer Conference. And they showed it off. Sundar Pichai, head of Google, goes up there and straight up says,
That's like the beginning.
I'm not really
of the
a big
presentation.
gamer. He says that.
I play FIFA.
So like that kind of sets the stage for the next few years. Then they tell you that a guy named Phil Harrison is at the head of this whole thing. Phil Harrison has like the opposite of the Midas touch in that every product that he has any influence in fails. And so that's their second hint. But ultimately, I believe the reason they cut it is because Google has this weird, well, it's weird to me, I guess not to them, but they have this idea that like if they introduce a new product or service, if it isn't like gangbusters by the end of like 4 months, then it's dead. They might limp it along, but it's dead. So one of my favorite Google applications that has seen, its demise was a thing called Inbox. It was supposed to be like a new way of doing Gmail, and it was amazing. It was an incredible service. It was the best way to do email. But basically, it didn't gain the traction, which is their word for like impressive, instant growth. And so they killed it. They merged a couple of the novel features into Gmail, and that was it. And so they're not alone in this, right? Microsoft does this stuff. Like big tech companies do this stuff because so many big tech companies are just afraid to fully commit to something. They'll introduce a new service or a new product or a new ecosystem or whatever. And if it isn't like an immediate, everyone's on it, then it's going to die soon. And Stadia was just that. And I think the reason Stadia became a failure is because Google wasn't fully committed to it. And so when they were creating their own publishing arm with their own in-house developers called Stadia Games and Entertainment, or SG&E. And SG&E was supposed to create games that were only designed for the cloud, like games that you could only do in like a cloud streaming service. So all the time people are asking like, why would I play Stadia? Because it's just playing the same games on my PlayStation or Xbox, except with more latency, right? that was often the thing. But SG&E was supposed to be there to show you, hey, this is the stuff you can do only in the cloud. We can link machines together. We can build like, geolocation stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff it could have done with cloud native stuff, but they killed SG&E because Stadia wasn't an initial huge success. And so they got rid of their own publishing arm because they're like, wait a minute, you mean it takes like 5 years to make a game and millions of dollars before we even see a product? Wait, we can't do that. That takes too long. We're used to making something in 30 days and calling it done. So like they weren't in the long haul for making games. So they killed SG&E, which basically killed the primary selling point of Stadia, which is like cloud native only experiences. And when they did that, the writing was on the wall at that point. People started leaving the Stadia crew. They brought out less and less games over time. They kept, kind of feeding the same thing, like, oh no, we got stuff in the pipeline. We just got stuff. You just gotta wait. And like every month would come by, and it's like you got like one game, maybe a couple games. Like it wasn't the same pace as like other consoles or other platforms. And so it was kind of like all these missteps. They had a lot of marketing issues. They talked about 4K 60 FPS, and none of their games ran at 4K 60. They had the confusion with the subscription, right? Because the Pro subscription was supposed to like give you free games every month, but also like access to 4K streaming and stuff. But many people were like, wait, do I have to pay for the subscription to play my games? Because like the games, you buy them, but like, do I just buy the game or do I have to subscribe and buy the game? And like, so there was like all this confusion with their business model, and there were so many missteps. And if you see why GeForce Now and why Xbox Cloud Gaming and Luna to a lesser extent are still going, it's because their business models aren't convoluted. Mm-hmm. Because the people behind those, as much as I hate Amazon, but like the companies behind those are like, they're dedicated. They're like, we're doing this. Amazon might not be putting a ton of resources, but they're putting exactly the amount of resources they want. They're not doing less or more. They're just doing exactly it. And they're still there. Microsoft's like, yeah, we're all in on this cloud thing. They actually have Hideo Kojima working on like a cloud native game for their platform. And it's like, this is a company that cares about doing this. And Google just cared about, well, we got good tech. Let's just make money off this tech somebody and one of our engineers came up with, basically. And that's what they got. Long story short, people at the top were idiots, lack of foresight, and only catering to bean counters. That's what happened.
I think
and ironically, and since Google didn't really buy in completely, I mean, it's like, how can anybody else buy in completely? Mm-hmm. If you don't believe in your own product, who else is supposed to believe in your product?
Right. Exactly. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, right?
I use the Microsoft Cloud Gaming on the Steam Deck. I have an Edge browser set up basically to do that. And I don't have great internet, but it actually works very well even with shoddy internet. So, and that's actually really handy, really convenient if you want to play some of those, Xbox games like that Fortnite that all the kids are into these days.
That old Fortnite.
That for an old 2 weeks, as they'd say. And it works very well. I don't know how the technology works, but I appreciate the fact that Microsoft lets me use it for free. Well, sort of for free. I mean, there was an instance where one of the kids decided to buy $30 worth of content on Fortnite, and I was really angry about that. But outside of that, obviously I shouldn't have had my card or whatever associated with that. Yeah, so I mean, it's a neat service to have. But I do think cloud gaming is kind of I don't know, sad in a way though.
What do you mean?
Well, 20 years from now, some cloud game that you may have had played a lot and really enjoyed, like let's say you love Fortnite, 20 years from now it no longer exists. There's no way to share that game experience with kids, the next generation of gamers that follows. And I think that's potentially anyway. I'm sure someone could probably somehow it might migrate its way in the open source, but I can have, with games I grew up with, I can still have those games and I can still play those games, and I still do sometimes play those games, and I can share that experience with my kids, and the experience is basically the same. So I wonder if some of those experiences, just going to kind of get lost in the ether of the internet.
That is a long conversation about games preservation. But yeah, long story short, yeah, it can be problematic for that.
I've said this before, but I think games especially are a form of digital art, and to allow digital art to just disappear, I know it's digital, it's not, I guess, not real exactly, but I think it's real, and I think it's neat to see what people produce, especially years after the fact. I think the Grand Theft Auto series, although not for kids, I think it's a fun game and a neat time capsule in gaming history, especially when the PlayStation 2 kind of came about, and that can be preserved very easily. That experience, I don't know. I worry a little bit. I shouldn't worry, but it concerns me a little bit that some of these things, some of this cloud stuff, will just kind of ruins the gaming thing in general.
Not even just cloud stuff, though. I mean, there are many service-based games now that are probably not going to have their servers up in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Like what happens when Pokemon Go shuts down? How am I gonna what am I gonna do when I walk around and I'm
Pokemon Go 2.
No, okay.
Pokemon Go to the polls.
Pokemon Go to the computer and try to emulate it.
I'm sure they'll find a way of archiving these games and charging a decent amount of money to be able to play them in the future.
So as far as like cloud native gaming goes, like that's something I don't know if anyone really has an answer for in terms of preservation, but the cost of making games is so high now, especially like AAA, like big games, is so ridiculously high that it almost doesn't make sense to like make it exclusive unless you as a platform holder own the studio, right? Like timed exclusivity is probably like kind of a going away thing at this point. And like the idea is like games cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make, especially the big games. And so if you just limit it to just cloud gaming, right? Like it's like, oh hey, we spent $300 million making this really cool game. We're gonna put it on, Amazon Luna. It's like, okay, well, I hope you enjoy not getting any money back for your investment because it's not gonna work, right? And so that's why, the games like Call of Duty, right now Microsoft's trying to buy Activision Blizzard, and like everyone on Sony's side is flipping out because like, hey, wait a second, like we kind of want that over here too, but those games are really expensive. So Microsoft's capitulating, saying, yeah, we'll keep it on PlayStation. They're not keeping it on PlayStation because they want to. They're keeping it on PlayStation because the game's incredibly expensive. And like you're basically cutting out a whole revenue stream, right? And that's why, you're starting to see Sony making games on PC because they're like, wait, all these people on PC want to play our games. That's a revenue stream, right? And so if anything, I think the cost of gaming development and the increasing kind of behavior of like cross-play and stuff you can get in games where, like, for example, the newer Call of Duties, you can play PlayStation, Xbox, and PC people can all play together, like completely fine, right? There's nothing stopping them. And so with that, it's almost like platforms starting to not really matter that much with that kind of advent. You have cross saves and cross progression and cross play and all this, and it's like I think that's more of the future. And so you'll get a game, say, on a cloud platform, right? Let's say another like Luna or GeForce Now or something comes along, and it's like, hey, we have this game on our cloud streaming service. Odds are that game is elsewhere too. So yeah, you may not be able to play the Stadia version because it's gone, but I almost certainly there will be a version somewhere else. The only issue is cloud native stuff. If it has to only work in the cloud because of various design limitations and stuff, we'll see. Odds are, give it 10 years and we'll just emulate it.
I think with the major titles, you could probably always find some way to play it. Somebody will find a way. But with more obscure titles, there's always a problem with copyright. Like if somebody were to archive it for future posterity, there's a lot of legal issues with that. If you don't have the copyright to keep a hold of it and stuff like that.
I think the copyright thing is actually a hindrance to video game preservation. I understand the need for copyright. People invest time and money and effort into something. For someone to just steal it, yeah, it's not cool. But at some point in time, there needs to be some method to preserve that game and preserve that experience.
The real issue is the perversion of copyright law over the years, right? Like it was never meant to last as long as it does now. And there are many games that were made in the 70s and such that's in the 80s that should be entering into a form of public domain, but laws have just been changed and augmented and everything that like copyright in America is like what 80, 90 years now. It's kind of ridiculous.
I think it's for like music, it's the author's life plus 75 years. So if they're still alive,
wow,
you still need 75 years more.
So what happens when they sell the rights to the music to somebody else? Does that extend it for the
I'm
the
actually
life
not sure
of that
how that works for
organization?
corporations. Like if you
Yeah.
sell it to like say Sony, like how does that work? Whose person's life, or is it the company? I don't know. I have no idea how that works out.
I'm guessing it'd probably be like the composer or whoever actually made the music, right?
Yeah, but the whole thing is the author's life. Would that still hold true, even if that person doesn't own the rights anymore? Would it
But
also depend on that person's life?
I can own a chair doesn't mean I'm the one that built it, right? I think that's kind of the way they're looking at it. Like whoever originally created it would be the life. I could be wrong. I'm no lawyer, but that's how I would imagine it.
That's how I would imagine it too. But then why would they be spending so much money on the rights of these songs or whatever the music, if not that they saw a payback on that investment? There's got to be a reason.
Because the name of the game today is F you, I got mine.
Yeah, that's probably true. So do you think the future of gaming is all cloud, or do you think maybe we've seen the saturation point of cloud gaming?
It's hard to say. I think the future I would like to see, at least, it would be more like something on the Nintendo Switch, just because of the lower energy profile. Like that's something that's become kind of obvious to a lot of people, is like when you look at newer GPUs and CPUs and just like how they're incredibly power hungry, and like they're being released at the same time that we have like a lot of energy crisis, and like seems a little tone deaf. But I would like to think that the future is more, low power chips and things like that. But if you look at like cloud gaming, it is actually a better and more environmentally safe way, right? Because the computing is condensed to the single place. Because you think about, if you have a server that can host, I don't know, 20 or 30 games at a time, then then the power of that one server covers what would have been 20 or 30 power drawing consoles, right? So I think that's becoming more of a thing, not just from a, hey, we need to be green and whatever, that kind of stuff, but like more of a, this affects our bottom line, when we create devices that take too much power and all that, and people are going to start realizing like, oh, hey, I bought this new gaming PC, but it takes so much power that I'm basically paying like a $15 a month fee to use this thing. So I think that's going to become more and more obvious over time. And really the change is going to be probably something with cloud, with more consolidation, but also a move to more lower power devices.
You don't think that when you are paying for somebody else to host that for you, you're not also paying all their markup and overhead and profit motive and future R&D, that you're actually spending more?
You don't think you're paying that when you buy a console? You don't think you're paying like all that when you do that? Because you certainly are.
It's like I would rather sign up for a streaming service rather than buy a physical media that I can put on a shelf in my house.
Yeah, I think I think that's the ability to put something on your shelf or to have it, to own it. I mean, I guess anything can be destroyed though, right? I mean, just because you have it in your house doesn't mean your house is going to stand after a hurricane, let's say. But there's something to be said for not continually paying to use something. And also the thing too is like I don't know that centralized servers or services are actually necessarily better for, like, in the grand scheme of things, like necessarily more environmentally responsible. Because like I think you could probably argue, large cities, like very dense cities, are probably not good for the environment versus more dispersed smaller cities. So it almost seems like some kind of, I think that maybe that scales over into technology too, because when you have centralized areas for your data, they're very concentrated, and then also in some ways more vulnerable, I would say.
But it's a matter of like compute density. because, like, okay, for example, my Series X, right, while playing a game, generally draws between 200 and 230 watts, right? If you were to take a server that could play 30 of those games at a time, right? Because it has the blade, the GPUs and all that in there to, because the GPUs are carved up, they're not one GPU per machine, right? So like you take that compute density of 30 consoles, 230 watts times 30 versus however much that one machine takes, right? So it's a significantly lower energy consumption
At the same time, though,
compared to 30 of those consoles.
At the same time, though, those consoles are not necessarily always on either.
Well, when you have them plugged in, they're drawing power, trust me. But yeah, not 230 watts. I get that.
Right, but
the thing is if you take away, like, at any given moment, there's a certain number of people playing a game on that console, right? So like while mine might be turned off, there might be many millions of others who aren't, right? And if you can have the like that always on availability of those consoles in a very dense area, then you don't have to spread that geographically, because some areas geographically are more vulnerable when it comes to energy costs and energy issues than others. So if you place the data centers in areas that are less vulnerable to energy issues, maybe they have more access to renewables or any of those, then you reduce that.
Having worked in the data center for quite a while, I can tell you that it's insanely more expensive to power a data center than to have that same amount of power distributed over larger area like residential areas. You also have to keep in mind that data centers are paying commercial power rates. They're paying the overages. They never get into the low tier billing. They're usually pulling from multiple providers. They're on 3-phase. They have more expensive equipment to convert that to single phase power. They have PDUs that they have to put throughout the data center. They have to remove all that heat. That's less efficient and costs a lot more than what you typically do in your house. So I don't think, from my experience in working at a data center, that packing all of that into a building achieves any sort of economy of scale like you might think.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Also, the thing too is I think there's so many vulnerabilities in the network just in general. I mean, how many times have I lost or had network issues just streaming this show? I don't know that I could rely on any internet provider. I can't see it for a while now. Yeah.
And I definitely don't see cloud as being like the only option. I think cloud is a very like additive kind of thing. I don't think cloud gaming like should be the only thing going forward. I think we should definitely have cloud gaming as an option, because like it's really convenient, right? Like you had on your Steam Deck, like look how easy it is, just like pop open the browser and do it, right? It's really convenient. But there are many games that I would much rather play on a local machine. There are many experiences I would rather have on a local machine because of lack of video compression, better audio codecs, input latency, because like fact of life, fact of physics, right? Like light takes time to move, and if it only has to move like a few inches from my controller to the TV, I'm gonna have better latency. And so there are many more advantages to playing locally, but convenience, portability, kind of the portability of experience that comes with cloud, I get that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, no, it's going to be an additive thing at best.
Yeah, it's interesting nonetheless. So I guess we'll see how things go. I thought Stadia was going to take off a lot more than it did. I thought it was actually had some stay power to it, but I can't predict anything. I wasn't interested in it. I just figured it was going to stick around. Anyway, so I thought that was interesting for those of us that do some kind of gaming. The Google Stadia shutting down. I think hopefully, well, I guess we'll see what happens with Microsoft and GeForce Now. GeForce Now, what it's called, and then Luna, that we called it. So those three are the only three.
I think those are the only like major three that I can think of. I mean, there's others. I think there's like Shadow PC was doing a thing for a while, and there's these like bespoke things like sometimes I think like AT&T like offered Arkham Knight or something for streaming, and Nintendo does some cloud stuff with their console. Like they'll have Nintendo cloud streaming versions of games for the Switch. So it's not just those big three, but those are the big three.
Another topic I wanted to bring up. I know that for you GNOME folks, do any of you here read This Week in GNOME. Is that a regular read for any of you GNOME users?
I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, you didn't know it was a thing? It was kind of like they have This Week in KDE as well. I think these are interesting. So This Week in GNOME, they say everything's green again. So Open QA testing initiative. You can thank OpenSUSE for that one. The exiting tests are all passing again. So you can actually check those out. They have a place you can go look at that. So the core apps and libraries, they're using Vala now. And I thought that was more of an elementary thing. But nonetheless, Vala Flatpak SDK is available if you're interested. The Circle apps and libraries have been updated. So Secrets 7 was just released. So I don't know if you've checked that out at all. But they're just little things like basic checks for file conflicts, password history support for trash bin, stuff like that. And they have this Pika backup that gains support for excluding directories that contain cache directory.tag. So that's interesting. So if you use that backup program as well. And Playhouse is something that it's a third-party project. It's a playground for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which makes it easy to prototype, teach, design, and learn to build web things. And I thought that was pretty cool. So that's something fun to check out. I don't know if people are excited about GNOME here, if they want to get their next features or be excited about their next features being removed. You can check out thisweek.gnome.org. They have all that. So it's GNOME 43 that's out now, right? Is that the latest hotness in the GNOME world?
Pretty sure, but I don't know if it's actually hit anything yet. I think that's going to be in Fedora 37, but I don't know about if it's on Arch yet.
Still 42 in Arch.
Yeah, 42.4. Mine hasn't changed.
It'll probably hit OpenSUSE first because that's just faster than Arch. So in the this week in KDE Plasma, they're getting ready for Plasma 5.26. That it's benefited from major focus on stability. Not that I've had any issues with stability really. Although I've had some weird X11 issues. Oh, look at that. 43 is in Tumbleweed. Look at that. Prophetic just said that in the chat. So thank you, Prophetic. I don't keep track of GNOME. So also KDE welcomes a new app to the fold called Ghostwriter. I've not used it, but it's new.
That's the one I was talking about earlier.
Oh, is it? So that is your. Oh, okay. I see. The distraction-free writing, light and dark themes built in. That's fantastic. I'll have to check that out. So Ghostwriter, that might be fun. Some more interface improvements. So in Dolphin, dragging and dropping a folder into an empty area of the tab bar now opens it as a new tab, which that I think is pretty cool. There's a new screen plugin, chooser, on-screen display. Choosing the extend left now actually makes a new screen extend left, extend from the current primary screen. They should add an extend up. Does anybody here stack their screens? No? Is that just me? I like to stack them instead of going side to side. I think that's way better. A lot of bug fixes going on in Plasma, and that's pretty exciting as well. There's always new. Every time there's a new feature, there's always a new bug. So it's very neat to see. Like if you go to Pointy Stick, here's the website here. But if you like to check and see what's happening every week, Nate Graham has a post in for what's going on in Plasma, and I think that's really cool that he does that. You can kind of see what's going on, the new hotness that's coming, and if you're running a rolling distribution, you can obviously see that a little bit sooner. So anyway. So that was kind of some exciting things going on. I haven't welcomed Mark and Anthony or Swift in so welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Ubuntu 22.10 will come with GNOME 43.
Okay. So you're saying Ubuntu might get it before Arch?
That means that my rolling Rhino would have 43 then. That seems to update very quickly.
Okay.
I'll have to check that.
Is that the remix, or what is it called? Is the remix Rolling Rhino remix?
I'm not sure if it's called remix. Maybe it is. Let me just quickly check that.
Because there's one that Martin Wimpress made, and then somebody asked for permission to use the name, and then they made the Rolling Rhino remix that has like a little bit more features to it.
Right. Let's have a look. Oh, yeah, it is called Remix. Sorry, yeah, you're right. It's called Remix. I haven't looked at it. Obviously, I've been away for the last 3 weeks, so I haven't really seen. Well, they've updated their website. Looks nice. Yeah, I've been running that on the tablet, but it doesn't hold a lot of charge, so I might put Windows back on that. But I just sort of tried on the tablet for a while. I'm considering rolling Rhino for my main. Been running on the tablet for a little while now, and it's running fine. So we'll see.
It seems very risky because you're like in development branch with Rolling Rhino.
Yes, you are. That's correct. But nothing's gone pear-shaped so far. But it's I'm trying to find a happy medium of staying sort of up to date and sort of what can you say? I suppose there's no such thing as being stable, but something that doesn't affect the system too much, but you also get updated desktop and stuff. So it seems to be stable so far, running okay. Whether it's for a main system or not, I don't know. Suppose there's only one way to find out. Give it a go.
You make sure to use their command to upgrade it, because I think you're supposed to use a specific command, not apt, like the way you used to.
Yeah, no, it's rhino-update is the command for updating that.
One thing of interest that I saw in discussions in the Arch Linux world is that they're going to eventually begin officially supporting RISC-V hardware. So I'm looking to get my hand on a RISC-V PC that I can try out, since Raspberry Pis are now unobtainium.
Well, they're not totally unobtainium. They are hard to obtainium unless you got a lot of money. So Raspberry Pi 3 is going for like $137.
And the I see mentioned in the chat, the RISC-V laptop that's out is a good start.
What's the performance like on this? Is it going to be, you're going to have the comparable? I know a lot of the issue with the RISC-V was it was kind of slow in comparison to other chip platforms.
Just looking at it, this laptop's coming with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 256 gigabyte SSD, 1080p panel. I don't know. I imagine that it'd probably be equivalent to like other sort of Qualcomm ARM type processors, but I have no way of knowing that. We have to wait for it to actually be available and benchmarks to be done.
So besides it being an open source architecture, what are really the benefits of RISC?
I think that's the main one. Probably power efficiency.
And less dependence on the big two CPU producers.
So being
it does have a starting price of, sorry, this laptop has a starting price of $1,500, yeah. If that's an indication.
Yeah.
Does anybody know if RISC-V is more resistant to Spectre than like x86 is?
Those sorts of exploits are due to optimizations that they've done in pipelining inside the processor. I don't know if the RISC-V spec itself addresses that.
Yeah, no, this laptop is outside of my price range at this point. But I mean, someone's got to be the early technology adopter to really get the thing going. I'm just not one of those people.
Sorry, which one are we talking about?
There's a link in the
in chat.
Yep, in the chat. I don't know if you got it.
Oh yeah, okay.
So yeah, there's an open source architecture and an actual product, and it's a nice looking laptop too. It doesn't look like it's a flimsy piece of garbage. It's got a lot of ports on it. It has a headphone port, huh? That's exciting. I wonder if it has USB-C. I didn't see that. But it has an actual Ethernet port on it as well.
The way that I understand RISC-V is that it's a specification. So it's not actually a product, a physical product itself. RISC-V is the specification that comes out. And then manufacturers of chips can take that, and they can take that specification and make their own chips and build things around it. So is there not also the situation you can get where a RISC-V processor manufacturer can build bits around it that may not be necessarily open source as well, like ARM?
Of course.
Yeah. So it could be a mess too. Well, I guess we'll see, right? Mm-hmm. Then I wonder if there's one RISC-V platform that you can target, or if you have to have different builds for different RISC-V machines.
Yeah, I think we're going to have the same mess when RISC-V takes off that we have with ARM, where you have a variety of different hardware. You'll need a variety of different OSs and builds of those OSs to work on each one.
What does it come with? What OS, or it doesn't?
Probably Linux. Who else would buy that?
Anywhere? I can't. Can't
It
see
says
them,
it
though.
runs Alibaba's own Linux-based OS,
Oh.
Open Analysis, which I haven't heard of.
Oh, okay, yep. All right. Alibaba.
But that was a site where you got cheap things.
Mm-hmm. Same
Sounds
people.
like someone on a magic carpet, doesn't it?
They are also very large cloud hoster from what I understand.
Huh. This I didn't know.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but
That's correct. They are a AWS competitor.
And where do they have their servers, like all around the world as well?
Well, I don't support the Chinese services, so I haven't looked into it, but I know it's one of the options you see in many cloud connected applications. Who do you want to talk to? And Alibaba's always a choice.
So they compete against Amazon retail, and then they also compete in the cloud with Amazon.
well,
Well,
and they are, I believe they compete in the wholesale market for pretty much everything, not just electronics. I believe I believe you can buy like houses and cars and stuff through that.
Like 3D printed houses?
No, just in a marketplace for all sorts of things.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's good to see there's some development going on with RISC-V, I think. It's good to have competitors in the architectures. I just don't see any like valid, like compelling business reason to switch architectures at this point. I'm very happy with x86 and what it does for me. So maybe that makes me a curmudgeon.
You would probably need to make sure that there's a market for it, so it does make it. And then if it does make it, then you could probably be assured there's going to be there for a while. Because I mean, otherwise you're risking being an early adopter and possibly not making it.
Right.
I thought it had to do with the licensing too, because like ARM, there's a licensing thing too with how it gets created and custom built for boards, whereas RISC is more open. And that's one of the main benefits is that it's way more open, way more easier to take advantage of. And as you know, ARM, being that I think it was recently bought out, what they do with new versions of stuff is like really up to them. Whereas RISC-V, you have a little more control. But yeah, that's the kind of main reasons. Like it's eventually, I do believe RISC-V is the future. It's just a matter of adoption and time and getting more headway.
NVIDIA wasn't able to buy ARM.
So it's still independent then?
I believe so. There's like the owners are weird. Somebody's like an owner in England and in China. I'm not exactly sure how the ownership of ARM is, but they're not part of NVIDIA.
Yeah, the acquisition announcement was terminated. I think there were some EU issues. That was back in February.
Yeah, and they just recently actually downsized by 20%. So whoever owns them now, they're coming back. So that's
I
rough.
think SoftBank still owns them.
But yeah, from my recollection, it was about the licensing and flexibility and that kind of thing. But for businesses, if you own a factory and you want to have microcontrollers on a bunch of stuff, it's eventually people will begin to adopt and see RISC-V as a more. It's just that's so early still for them. It's not really penetrating businesses as much, but it will.
It's actually interesting to see the evolution of technology. I think we're kind of I think where a lot of the market's going more for energy efficient, except for NVIDIA, apparently, on new releases. So do you see more of a push toward less power consumption and maybe away from these high-end GPUs, like the 40 whatever series of NVIDIA, I guess, is not really made people happy. So I wonder if that's going to change like future games then, if they're going to be targeting, not these higher end GPUs, if maybe they'll be targeting a little bit, more conservatively.
I think that was trending that way for a while, but then when Apple came out with the M1 chips, that it was like the best proof of concept of like having power and like efficient power consumption. It was kind of like a ripple effect, like, wow, that's the new norm, that's the new standard, and we have to kind of try to bridge that gap, and it's not as easy to do, but people are trying to hype it up as if they are going in that direction or as good at doing it as well. And then secondly, the most recent history or recent news is like, with energy prices going up everywhere, it's like that's even more of a pain point. I hear people turning off their servers at home. I hear people, doing kind of stuff to cut back. So I think those two issues compounding is probably driving a lot of that.
Oh, for sure. Welcome, Brandon. Nice to see you.
How's it going?
Wonderful. It's been a minute or two.
Yeah, good to see you too. My first saloon.
Well,
I try to jump in since I had about 30 minutes.
That's about how much we have left anyway.
Long time listener, first time jump in. You've been listening to Saloon for a while?
It was part of the Text Digital Network, the
okay.
Sudo show.
Oh yeah, now that voice now rings a bell. Yes,
The mispronounced show.
it's not Sodo, Sudo.
Oh, are we going to get into that?
Sudo.
Sudo.
Well, whichever, however you want to pronounce it.
Ninja, do you pronounce it GNOME?
Yes.
Are you that kind of? Okay.
It is GNOME.
But when I say Sudo, you know what I mean. And I think Sudo flows better than Sudo. Don't you think?
So, Ninja, also, when people say Linux, do you say GNU/Linux? Do you tell them that too?
Yes.
And do you tell them what GNU stands for?
Did you just say GNU?
Yeah. Do you tell them what that stands for?
GNU is not Unix.
Which means what?
Yeah.
That's what it stands for.
What does it even mean?
GNU is not Unix.
Mm.
And that's
like
the
Unix.
playful take. That's the playful take. It was named in a playful way, and I think naming things is a playful thing too. So it's okay if other people pronounce it differently. It might.
Just gives me a reason to pick on them more.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. So, Brandon, are you one of those that got the Steam Deck? Looks like it.
Yeah, I picked it up. I pre-ordered. I actually was one of the first. I couldn't believe it. I thought like Michael or Ryan would get it before me, or Matt. Like I thought they'd be on top of it. It would have been on top of it's better than me. One, I don't game a lot. So, and then when I was one of the first. I thought I was one of the first hosts to get it. I was surprised. I got this. When did I get it? I think I got it in January.
Oh, wow.
And I think I've turned it on 4 times.
Wow.
Mine gets a lot of use in my house.
I like it. Don't get me wrong, but it's I just don't have the time
Right.
for gaming.
That makes sense.
One of those 4 times was I played Mech Warrior 5 for an hour on the plane.
Nice.
On the way to Raleigh. But other than that, that was the last time I touched it, and that was back in July.
When you guys use it, do you guys like forget that you're using a Steam Deck? You're getting so engrossed in the experience.
I use it as a game device. I don't really care what's underneath of it. Like that, that's kind of how I'm trying to approach it. Like I'm trying to approach it as an appliance versus like a toy that I tinker with. Like I have plenty of things for that. Like I'm leaving SteamOS on it. I'm not going to put Fedora on it or Debian. I'm just going to
leave it as is.
Leave it as is.
Yeah, I find the experience with it has been really pretty great as far as I use it as an appliance, and I have used it as a desktop too, just to see if I could. And actually, it works pretty well for that. But what I was going to get to and why I talked about the Steam Deck is with the shift of electricity costs going up and so forth. It seems like I wonder now if newer games are going to target things more of like the Steam Deck like specifications, if that's more likely than those like the massively expensive huge GPUs. Do you think the market's going to shift more toward that because of how things are shifting right now? People are not upgrading as much. People aren't buying the newer GPUs as much. So I wonder if there might be a shift to change the target.
You can do 1080p gaming with a 1080 with a NVIDIA 1080. So it's like depending on the game, obviously, but there's no reason. And I see something more like this happening more and more. But the like the new, what was it? The new NVIDIA 4000 series, the power requirements are extremely ridiculous. They're giant on top of that. I think I don't remember which board vendor it is. They're suggesting for the 4090 1,000 watts minimum.
Wow.
Jeez.
So how would, seems like that would I mean, you have to buy quite the PSU just to drive that, plus everything else on the main board. Yeah, I think that's pretty crazy.
What's so silly, I mean, is that everything's getting smaller, and in some cases, not always more power efficient. I mean, if Intel 12th gen is any indicator, that it's getting smaller, but also power hungry. But the GPU is now bigger than even your motherboard in some cases.
Right. It needs its own special supports. Maybe the GPU should be the motherboard. You plug everything into that.
Yeah, maybe it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
Some sort of module that you plug the motherboard into.
Right. Go the other way with it. You build the whole thing around the GPU. I wonder where things are going to go from here. Do you say that the new Intel chips are much more efficient power wise?
So they're not.
Oh, they're not.
They're not. They're like, if you look at the laptop, like the 12th gen laptops, battery life is worse in some cases than the 11th, unless you get a U series 12th gen, like the 10th gen at X1 Carbon. If my memory is right, I could be wrong, but my memory says is that the battery life is worse on the 10th gen than on the 9th.
What if that's dependent on the nature of the work, or if it's just lack of optimization with the high efficiency cores?
Yeah, I was really surprised because of the introduction of big little cores in the architecture. I was actually very surprised. I think we might see a change in 13. We'll see. I'm not optimistic. But it's just funny. I never thought I'd want to buy an AMD laptop, but I just ordered one. And it's because the battery life of the ThinkPad X13 AMD is 2 hours better than Intel.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, and I do remember, and I want to say it was when the 3000 or 4000 series were coming out. Like, one of the big talking points I heard people making was just the amount of power they were getting out of those chips, but yet the power consumption was actually going down, I believe. I don't know if it's still been continuing that trend, but I know they had reduced the amount of power those were taking and still increased the actual performance of them too, if I recall.
Yeah, I thought I also read someplace that the amount of work per watt of power was actually better on the AMD CPUs than there were even on ARM CPUs. I thought I read that someplace.
Now, ARM right now, unless you're using Apple Silicon, like the equivalent ARM chip out there that equates to I'll make it easy. The X13S, the ThinkPad X13S, has an ARM processor in it. I'm not going to buy it yet because I can't put Linux on it yet. But it's equivalent to a Core i5 11th gen, like in terms of performance. Not bad. The battery life is better than Intel, the equivalent Core i5 Intel, but not by much. So Intel, it's not a huge leap yet. They're the only way you can get like the extreme like 24-hour battery life right now is if you buy a Mac, and it's the some, I don't know how they do it with the M series chips, like how they are like, we're getting this remarkable performance per watt. I'm not a physicist or a computer engineer, so I'm not gonna pretend to understand it, but they like in some, like it's very much that's very much ahead of its time. That I think they're way ahead of everyone in terms of performance per watt, but I think it's still an ARM right now. I still think is niche, other than in data center and edge use cases and in phones. I don't unless there's like a huge shift where there's like a significant power efficiency gain using ARM. There's going to be zero reason to have mass adoption. Yeah, edge IoT, same thing in my mind.
Yeah, I like it for mobile devices. I think that's pretty handy. But I know, like, I get pretty great battery life out of the Steam Deck, but I am also playing mostly like Game Boy Advance games on it right now. So I'm one of those kicks. It's mostly, I never had one, so it's kind of my first thing.
One of the things I really want to get on this is there's a mod for X-Wing Alliance. I don't know if anyone played X-Wing Alliance or TIE Fighter, but that was one of my favorite games, TIE Fighter specifically, and they've basically upscaled the whole thing. Like it looks like a fairly modern game, and someone's taken like the entire campaign from TIE Fighter and put it in and like made some of their own enhancements. But for whatever reason, I cannot get that to work in Wine at all.
Seems like there'd be someone has probably worked on that on like the Proton DB or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look to see if anyone's like tried. The problem is that it's like they're using a very special modded version of what's that? Of like direct draw, and it's there's a lot of like when you start it, it basically, so in Windows, so like this modded version of direct draw, it allows it so it can offload most of the graphics processing as it can onto your GPU. Like this is like back, these are like super old games before we had this a lot of these concepts. So otherwise it would just run right off your CPU, which is very taxing. It is taxing even for a game this old. And but now that they've introduced this new hack together direct draw into the game, I don't know what's wrong. I've seen there were some Vulkan errors. I need to see if I can resolve it.
Well, good luck with that. That'd be interesting to see if you can get that working on your Steam Deck even.
Yeah, I want it on the Steam Deck because because the joysticks make it like the perfect device for that game.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's about that time to talk about what's coming up next week. We're going to be doing an application appetizer is what's on the schedule, but I thought, okay, here's some options. One, to go into FlatHub again and look for an Office application you haven't tried, something different. Or another would be a webcam application you haven't used before from wherever. The last one I thought would be interesting too is like some different PDF tools. I don't know if people use PDFs very much. You could do something like that. Or scrap all those ideas and do a desktop environment. Like play around with the desktop environment, a specific one. Like maybe there's something out there that you may haven't, given a whirl. So I want to throw those ideas out there, see if there's anything that really jumps out at you and you find interesting. So like if we were like, maybe we could do like GNOME, like a GNOME challenge, or maybe something like a a window manager, a specific one maybe. I don't know. Here's just some thoughts. And hear what
Moksha desktop.
What's that?
The Moksha desktop.
The Moksha desktop.
Bodhi Linux.
Yeah.
See if we can dig up some not well-known obscure desktops.
Or another one that I think is interesting is the CDE desktop.
I was just thinking the same thing.
So I think that would be kind of cool to try out.
I think
Is
there's a
that a-
distro that still uses that as its default.
What distro is that? Slackware?
You're not far off.
So I think that there's I want to say it's available on OpenSUSE Tumbleweed now. I have to check. I thought I read that somebody decided to make it work, which means it's probably on Fedora then too.
There is another new one out. I can't remember what it was called.
Oh, it's in the official OpenSUSE repository.
Yeah, CDE was big on Unix, but now it's been open sourced, so
Right.
anybody can include it.
Is
Oh my
that
gosh.
Leap and Tumbleweed or just Tumbleweed?
Just Tumbleweed. Well, there's some actually, it's available also on Leap, but you have to add a repository. Now that's funny. I'm gonna have to install that, even if we don't do a challenge or whatever exploration. Anyway, so those are my ideas. Is there any of those that kind of sticks out to you as being interesting to do? We did a game one a while ago, music app a while ago as well. So I don't know if maybe an Office application or a PDF tool would be interesting, or if we went and took a left turn and did a desktop environment, a foreign desktop environment. I'm not seeing any faces light up. Not that I'm seeing a lot of faces.
I like the
don't-
CDE idea.
You like that idea? I imagine it's probably available in Arch. I imagine it's also probably available in Fedora. I know it's available in OpenSUSE. You want to do that? Do a desktop environment of CDE?
CDE. How do you get CDE? Where does that?
So it's
Who provides it?
It's NsCDE. So it's on GitHub. There's a link in the chat.
Stands for Common Desktop Environment. It was prevalent on Unix in the 90s.
And NsCDE is not so common desktop environment, which is funny. That's the new iteration.
Well, that's a retro. It's not the same.
Well, it kind of is, isn't it? Don't you think?
Well, it provides compatibility for newer applications to run under CDE.
Right.
I'm still searching.
Do you get the link?
It's on Zoom.
And in the YouTube.
No, it is in Fedora.
It is?
Yeah.
Of course it is. It's got pretty active development, I would say. I mean, not a whole lot in May and June or in August, but it has had quite a bit this year, even a lot late last year. I think getting the actual CDE to run might be more of a headache.
It'd be great if there was a distro that already had it like pre-built.
I was playing around with old distros in the last few weeks, and I remember seeing CDE as one of the choices, and I don't remember which distro it was.
Back in the old SUSE, like this is before OpenSUSE existed. This is so pre the Novell acquisition. SUSE had CDE in it. I think it was SUSE 8. It was an option in the installer. I remember because I accidentally checked. I remember because I accidentally checked it instead of KDE, and was like, "What is this?" So
You were thinking, "Welcome to Netscape."
I don't. When I first played with CDE, I'm like, "What is this magic?"
It's like a time machine.
Yeah. All right. So I guess
I remember. I was playing around with FreeBSD.
Oh.
That makes sense.
yeah, it'd be in BSD.
I used it in HP Unix, and I thought it was pretty great at the time. I think I'm going to convert one of the kids' computers to CDE and just see, so when they have to type a paper, like Monday, we'll see how it goes. I think I'll do it surreptitiously so they don't actually see it, me do it, just to see what happens.
No, gotta do it worse, especially for someone young. Hand them a computer with DOS with only I don't know, WordPerfect 5.
Just hand him a typewriter.
WordStar 2000.
So funny enough, I was just at an estate sale today, just because I was on my way home from the grocery store, and they had some typewriters there. I was really tempted to get one of them, but I didn't want to spend $25, so I'm gonna go tomorrow when everything's half off. But I did pick up an adding machine, like like a metal case, and then you have to with a paper. I did pick that up, so I haven't messed with it much yet, but I was trying to explain to the kids that's how you used to use calculators. And
I get one of those for my wife since she's an accountant.
So now you're ready, Nate, for when the power grid goes down.
I have solar panels, so I'm ready for when the power grid goes down. Solar panels and a battery backup.
So yours are disconnected, actual, like, you're not dependent at all on the power grid?
No, so I have only a few circuits are battery back. So my kitchen will still operate. The living room, TV, and games will still operate. Things like that. Furnace, but I won't have. But like all the ancillary rooms, those won't operate. And back here will shut down as well. I only have solar panels functioning when the grid is up, so I don't have it set up back here for that.
I bought this. This is one thing I wanted. I wanted this laptop when I was a kid.
Oh, nice.
My neighbor had it, and I found it. It's like basically new condition, and I put it's running all my favorite DOS things. Like WordPerfect, the whole 9 yards. I was one day, like when my daughter's needs to type up an essay or something when she's a little older, I'm gonna go, here you go. You got to go through the pain I went through. You got to do it on WordPerfect 5. If you can do it on WordPerfect 5, you can do it on anything.
What games do you have on there?
Doom.
Let's see. I put Myst on here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I put the original TIE Fighter on here because I still have the floppy disks for it.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. I was really happy to find this.
What year was it released, that laptop?
This one was 1994.
Okay.
So it's a 486 DX4.
50 or 66?
It's a 75.
75. Whoa, that's screaming.
Yeah. This one is one of the few ThinkPads not to support a dock. I didn't realize that at the time. I would have bought a different one, but this is probably one of the best ones. This was just in such good condition. I couldn't pass it up. Like, it has a mechanical keyboard.
Wow.
It feels so weird to type on it compared to everything else I have.
Like modern laptops where you have like 3 millimeters of actual compression or whatever, 4 millimeters.
1 point. The ThinkPad I just ordered is 1.8.
Sorry, I was way off. Well,
I was quite a fan of Commander Keen back in the DOS.
Oh yeah.
days.
Well, who wasn't a fan of Commander Keen? Great platformer. All right, so just real quick, next week, we're going to talk about the not so common desktop environment, and it is that time for us to close up the saloon. So I want to thank you all for showing up here. So Mark, you have the Atlanta Linux Enthusiasts group, and you meet every Sunday at what time?
At 3 p.m. Eastern. We meet for 3 hours. And again, it's there's no set agenda. You come and bring your Linux questions and open source, and we'll try to help you with it. So that's on. You can get more information at ale.org. And again, we meet every Sunday, so people are welcome to join us online and ask their questions.
Go from the saloon to go get an ale tomorrow. Nice. Now I was going to have Brandon talk about a show, the Sudo show, but he left. That's too bad. Maybe I should have started with him. Tomorrow, Destination Linux is streaming live at 1 p.m. Eastern. Steve's very own, I think I got a reminder that he is streaming live tomorrow as well at 8 a.m. Central or 9 p.m. Eastern. Oh, I forgot to ask what was coming up next on Linux User Space. Check out Linux User Space. They have a bi-weekly show. Dan and Leo always do a great job. I'm on a show called Linux Out Loud, but we actually talked about Stadia being dead and long live Stadia. So there is that. We kind of took some other perspectives from it, which is actually why I want to bring it up here as well. If you want more things that I do, you can go to keepinglate.com. I write articles and sometimes do videos. I actually recently just did a YouTube short on my mini video gaming rack for my living room. So that's out there now if you want to check that out. I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation, both Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas. No? Nothing?
I think. I don't know.
Distro. I've been running it on. Yeah.
So
I remember. Sorry.
I was just gonna say it was very cool. So
Well,
Eris, what? Go ahead.
Oh, we.
Last week, we just recorded, and I can't remember what we talked about. Hang on, I took notes. I can't believe it. I'm not prepared. Well, Matt harps on me for running Arch, of course. Nice to see. Oh, you're muted. What's that?